It began with a whisper, faint, trembling, almost swallowed by the hum of palace walls. "I will not survive." The words were never meant to leave that hospital room, but they did. And when they did, they rippled across the world like a cold wind cutting through the heart of Britain. What would make the future king of England, a man raised to embody resilience, dignity, and control, utter something so final? Was it exhaustion? Despair? Or something darker, hidden behind the royal smile that millions mistook for calm? But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Cameras flashed, crowds cheered, but behind every wave, every handshake, and every soft grin, Prince William was crumbling inside. The perfect picture of a royal heir, devoted husband, loving father, and the nation's silent anchor was about to fracture. This wasn't just another royal headline. It was a cry for help, one that the world almost missed. Because when a prince begins to disappear, not from the throne, but from himself, the truth becomes unbearable. And what you're about to hear might just change how you see the royal family forever. Let's go back to where the silence began. Months before the rumors surfaced, royal watchers noticed something strange. William's public appearances became shorter, his posture heavier, his expressions, once open and confident, now strained, almost guarded. Catherine tried to fill the void with her warm charm, but her eyes told a story of fear, a fear no one dared to speak aloud. One night, during a charity gala at Windsor, William excused himself mid-speech. Witnesses said he went pale. Others claimed he whispered something to his aide, something about dizziness, pain, or perhaps the word that now haunts royal insiders, episode. He didn't collapse. He didn't faint. But when he returned to the podium, the spark was gone. And that's when the speculation began. The tabloids called it fatigue. Palace aides called it a long-standing medical evaluation. But behind closed doors, a secret doctor's report was being circulated, one that would never be shown to the public. It wasn't stress. It wasn't anxiety. It wasn't grief. It was something that scared even the royal physicians. Have you ever seen someone smile through fear? The kind of smile that's meant to protect others more than oneself? That was William. Every handshake, every wave, every public laugh, all rehearsed perfection masking a ticking clock. And yet, no one asked the real question. Why now? Why would the palace suddenly rearrange entire royal tours, cancel state events, and release oddly worded statements about temporary health measures? Why would William retreat to Norfolk, shutting himself away from the cameras for weeks at a time? Because something inside him had changed. There were whispers that he had known for months, maybe even longer, but refused to tell anyone. He wanted to keep living normally, pretending that duty could conquer biology. But it couldn't. Not this time. One aide, speaking anonymously, described a haunting scene in the palace corridor. William sitting in a chair, staring at an old photograph of his mother, Diana. He whispered to himself, "She didn't get to say goodbye either." That sentence became the breaking point for those who loved him. Catherine, ever the pillar of grace, began spending sleepless nights by his side. Doctors came and went under strict confidentiality. Even the palace kitchen staff noticed changes. William's diet suddenly controlled, his appetite fading. And yet, the world kept spinning. The monarchy couldn't afford weakness. Not now. Not when King Charles's own health had been under scrutiny. So the story was buried, sealed behind official smiles and polished press releases. But truth has a way of slipping through cracks. A single photograph changed everything, taken during a quiet church visit in Balmoral. William, walking slightly behind Catherine, his hand resting on her shoulder. His face, thinner, his complexion pale. It wasn't the prince the public knew. It was a man fighting something unseen. That image flooded social media within hours. People began asking the same question the palace feared most. Is Prince William sick? But the response was silence. Deafening, deliberate silence. Inside the palace, tension grew. Staff were told to act as usual. Catherine began shielding the children from overhearing hushed conversations. George, old enough to notice the worry in his parents' faces, asked his nanny if Papa was going away. Imagine hearing that from your child and not knowing how to answer. Behind the gilded gates, William wrote letters. Personal ones. To his father, to his children, even one to his late mother, which he left beside a candle at Kensington Palace. No one knows what those letters said, but one phrase appeared more than once. If I can't finish what she started, I must make sure they do. This wasn't just an illness. It was a reckoning. The heir to the throne, the man born to carry the crown into the next generation, was preparing for something no one expected, an ending. But what exactly was ending? His reign before it began? His health? Or something far greater? His will to fight? Doctors had flown indiscreetly from abroad. Specialists in fields that dealt not with simple ailments, but with the human body's most unpredictable battles. Some say neurological, others whisper cancer. But only one detail was confirmed behind the curtain of royal secrecy. William's condition was life-limiting. The word terminal was never used, but everyone knew what it meant. And still, he smiled. At public events, William looked almost serene, as though he'd made peace with something the world wasn't ready to accept. His speeches grew more personal. His words carried an emotional weight that left even journalists silent. "Every day we're given," he once said at a veterans memorial, "is not guaranteed, but earned." People applauded, but few realized he was talking about himself. Catherine knew. Her expressions gave her away. The faint tremor in her hand, the subtle glance at him when he stumbled on a word, the way her smile would tighten, as though forcing normalcy into a reality that was anything but normal. Even King Charles was seen uncharacteristically emotional during a private engagement. The monarch, long regarded as stoic and restrained, reportedly paused during a speech about family legacy and wiped away tears. Palace aides dismissed it as a moment of reflection, but insiders knew better. Something had broken inside the royal family, something beyond titles, beyond duty, beyond image. As weeks passed, William's appearances grew rarer. The press began filling the silence with speculation. Some claimed he was taking time to support Catherine's health. Others hinted at personal matters. But a handful of seasoned reporters sensed the truth, the same truth the palace refused to confirm, that the heir to the throne was dying. One insider described the atmosphere in Kensington Palace as eerily calm. The kind of calm that comes when everyone knows a storm is coming, but no one dares to speak it aloud. And then it happened. A royal press release appeared online, short, vague, and chilling. His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales is undergoing a private medical evaluation. The family requests privacy. That was it. No details, no cause, no timeline. The public went into frenzy. Millions flooded social media, pleading for answers. News outlets dissected every word. Medical evaluation could mean anything, from exhaustion to terminal illness. But the real clue was in the phrase, requests privacy. Because the royal family never asks for privacy unless there's something worth hiding. Days later, a whistleblower from the palace medical staff reportedly leaked a line from a doctor's memo, a memo that contained 3 words that shook Britain to its core: prognosis, poor survival. That leak was swiftly denied, scrubbed from every major outlet within hours. But once truth escapes, it cannot be recalled. And suddenly, the once invincible image of the modern royal family began to crumble. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace with candles and signs reading, "We stand with William." Celebrities, political figures, even foreign leaders sent messages of strength and solidarity. But inside the walls of the palace, the mood was somber, almost funereal. Those closest to William described him as resigned but purposeful. He wasn't angry. He wasn't scared. He was focused, almost as if preparing for a transition. He reportedly began recording private messages for his children, each one sealed in envelopes marked for later. One message, according to insiders, began with the words, "My dear George, one day you'll understand why I had to be honest." Even now, no one knows what that honesty referred to. Meanwhile, Catherine, torn between love and duty, began planning for the unimaginable, a world without him. She took on more engagements, spoke to advisors, even discussed the children's future roles. But every night, she would return home and sit beside William's bed, holding his hand long after he fell asleep. You can almost picture it: the flicker of a bedside lamp, the quiet hum of a clock, the silence of 2 souls who have said everything there is to say without uttering a word. And yet, through all the sadness, William's determination only grew. He refused pity. He refused retreat. He told his aides, "As long as I can stand, I'll serve." That sentence became his rallying cry and his curse. because behind that bravery was the truth he could no longer outrun. In a private meeting, William reportedly told his father, "I need to make peace before it's too late." King Charles, shaken, replied, "You have nothing to make peace with." But William disagreed. "I've carried guilt my entire life. For Mum, for Harry, for the crown, and now for this." Those words broke Charles. Witnesses say he left the room in tears. For the first time, Britain's two future kings were united, not by power, but by mortality. And then came the night everything changed. A quiet evening in Norfolk. The children asleep. Catherine reading by the fire. William stood by the window, staring into the dark. When she asked what was wrong, he turned and said, "I need to record something." That recording, insiders later revealed, would be his most personal message ever, not to the public, but to the people he loved most. No one outside the family has heard it, but those who have say it begins with the same words that opened this story. "I will not survive." But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It was supposed to be a day of celebration, bright skies, crisp winds, and cheers echoing through the palace courtyard. Cameras were ready, flags waved, and photographers leaned over barriers just to capture a glimpse of the man destined to be king. No one could have imagined that by sunset, whispers of fear would spread through Britain like wildfire. Prince William had always been known for his composure. Even in chaos, he carried that calm steadiness, a quiet confidence that made people believe in the monarchy again. But on that April morning, something was different. His gait was slightly uneven. His smile, that signature Windsor charm, flickered, faint and brief. He greeted the crowd, shook hands, spoke softly to children holding daffodils. Cameras captured every second. But as the flashbulbs went off, one image, a single frozen frame, would haunt royal observers for months. In that image, William's hand was trembling. At first, people dismissed it. A trick of the camera. The wind, maybe. But those who were there knew better. One witness described the scene later, her voice trembling. He looked lost. Like he was there, but not really there. Minutes later, as he moved toward his car, his composure broke. He paused, pressed a hand to his chest, and whispered something to his aide. The aide's expression changed instantly, from polite professionalism to sheer panic. That was the moment everything changed. He didn't faint. He didn't fall. He simply stood there, pale and motionless, his eyes glassy. Catherine rushed to his side, her face tightening as she reached for his arm. They exchanged a look that told a story no press statement could ever explain, a look of recognition, of fear, of something that had been quietly building for too long. Within seconds, the cameras were lowered. Security formed a circle. The crowd grew silent. And for a brief, chilling moment, the future of the monarchy hung in the air. Minutes later, William was whisked away. The palace issued a statement within the hour. The Prince of Wales felt unwell during a public engagement and has returned home as a precaution. A precaution. That word appeared on every news channel, every royal blog, every trending tag. But no one bought it. You could see it in the footage. This wasn't exhaustion. This was something deeper. Something William had been hiding. That night, the palace went dark. No lights in the windows. No official photographers. Even the press stationed at Kensington were told to leave. Inside, silence ruled. According to an insider, William spent the evening in a private medical suite within the palace grounds. Doctors came in quietly through the back entrance. Blood tests, scans, consultations, all performed under a veil of secrecy. Catherine didn't leave his side. But there was one detail that chilled those who were there. William refused to call his father. Not out of pride, out of fear. He didn't want Charles to know. Not yet. Not until he was sure. Not until he had words to put to the horror forming inside him. Hours later, the first whispers began to leak. A royal correspondent tweeted, then deleted, a message reading, "Something serious is unfolding behind closed doors at Kensington Palace." By morning, the tabloids erupted. Prince William collapses. Future king's secret health battle. Is Britain ready for tragedy? The palace's silence only fueled the fire. For days, William disappeared from public view. The world waited for answers, but the palace offered none. Even the royal social media pages went dormant. It was as if time itself had paused, the entire nation holding its breath for news that never came. But inside those palace walls, something far more personal was unfolding. Catherine was terrified. She reportedly broke down during a late-night call with her sister, Pippa. "He's pretending it's nothing," she said through tears. "But I can see it. He's fading." Imagine the weight of those words. For years, the world had watched Catherine and William as the picture-perfect royal couple, steady, smiling, endlessly composed. But behind closed doors, they were two people facing what no crown, no title, no power could shield them from: mortality. When William finally regained enough strength to stand, he looked at his wife and said, "We can't let this get out. Not yet." But secrets have a way of slipping through even the thickest palace walls. A week later, an anonymous hospital staffer leaked that the prince had undergone urgent diagnostic tests. No details, no results, just enough to ignite panic. News anchors speculated. Social media theories multiplied. Was it stress? A heart condition? Something neurological? Every hour, new insider claims surfaced, and every time, the palace remained silent. Until one night, when a reporter from The Guardian received an anonymous envelope. Inside, a single sheet of paper with a date, a doctor's signature, and one redacted line. But 3 words were left visible. "Requires immediate treatment." No one could confirm its authenticity, but it was enough. Overnight, the story exploded globally. And for the first time, the palace communications team went into full lockdown mode. The next morning, a convoy of black cars was seen leaving Kensington Palace. Royal watchers noticed something strange. Catherine's car followed directly behind William's, flanked by security. Destination: a private medical facility outside London. The press called it a routine checkup, but those words had lost all meaning by then. That evening, William's close friend and confidant, David Manning, visited him. According to someone present, Manning later told aides, "He's scared, and he's tired of pretending he's not." That sentence, when it reached Charles, broke the silence. King Charles called his son that night. Their conversation lasted 43 minutes. No one knows what was said, but afterward, Charles canceled all public engagements for 2 days. For the first time in decades, a royal silence meant fear, not control. Meanwhile, Catherine was seen leaving the hospital with swollen eyes, her face pale under the streetlights. She didn't stop for cameras. She didn't wave. She just got into her car and drove. Later that night, she made a call, not to the palace press team, not to her friends, but to her priest. "Please," she reportedly said, "pray for my husband." In the following days, palace staff described an almost surreal calm. Everyone walked on eggshells. Meals were brought to their rooms. The children were kept busy with their nannies. George, curious and bright, asked if Papa was sick. Catherine said, "Just a little." But even a child could sense the lie. And through it all, William smiled. Weakly, but purposefully. To him, admitting the truth meant admitting defeat. He began writing, longhand, on cream stationery. Letters, notes, perhaps even goodbyes. One aide said they found him late at night in his study, writing with trembling hands. When asked what he was doing, he simply replied, "Documenting." Documenting what? That question lingered for weeks, until a source close to the family revealed something chilling: that William had started keeping a private medical diary. Each day, he wrote his symptoms, thoughts, and feelings. Not for himself, but for my children to understand one day. Those words shattered those who read them. This wasn't a temporary illness. This was preparation. He began canceling private meetings, delegating projects, even rearranging estate management duties, tasks that hinted he was planning for a future he wouldn't be part of. And still, the world was kept in the dark. During one rare public appearance, he attended a small charity event in Windsor. Reporters noticed his hand shaking as he held the microphone. When asked about his health, he smiled and said, "Just a bit of stress." The crowd laughed politely, but Catherine didn't. Her eyes glistened as she looked away. Later, that video went viral. Millions commented on how tired he looked. But those closest to the situation knew the truth. He was trying to say goodbye without actually saying it. Days later, a royal correspondent published a cryptic column titled "The Man Who Won't Step Down." It hinted at an internal palace discussion about succession contingency, an unthinkable topic unless someone's health was in serious decline. When the article hit headlines, panic spread again. The palace denied everything. But the damage was done. Behind the scenes, Catherine begged William to rest. He refused. "If I stop, it's over," he said. "If I keep going, maybe it isn't." But the body doesn't negotiate with willpower. One evening, while reviewing documents with his secretary, William's pen slipped from his hand. His vision blurred. He leaned back, gasping. The secretary froze. For a brief moment, William's lips moved, forming words she barely heard. "Not now." He was rushed again to the private suite. No public acknowledgement followed. But that incident was the breaking point. Within 48 hours, King Charles arrived unannounced at Kensington. Father and son spoke privately for hours. When Charles left, his expression was grave. The cameras outside caught it. That haunted look only grief can carve into a face. Whatever was said in that room, it wasn't just about health. It was about legacy, about how much time they had left, both as men and as kings. And that's when the leaks began again. Someone within the medical circle confirmed off-record that His Royal Highness faces a prolonged and uncertain prognosis. Those words made front-page news across the world. Uncertain prognosis. No one said cancer. No one said degenerative disease. But everyone knew. And the silence that followed was worse than confirmation. That same night, William reportedly woke Catherine at 3 a.m. He couldn't sleep. "If this is it," he said quietly, "I want them to remember me laughing." She tried to smile, but tears spilled anyway. From that night on, William began making unexpected choices. Visiting schools, charities, hospitals, places he'd always loved. But now, there was an intensity, a deliberate grace in everything he did. Each handshake lingered. Each smile lasted a moment too long. The public called it renewed purpose. In truth, it was farewell. During a visit to a children's hospice, he knelt beside a young boy battling cancer. The boy asked, "Are you scared?" William smiled gently and replied, "Sometimes. But being scared means you care." Those who heard it said the room fell silent. Even the photographers lowered their cameras. When he left, Catherine walked a few steps behind, her hand clutching his arm. For the first time in her royal life, she looked like she might break. And yet, he kept going. Each public moment was a performance of strength and a countdown. But what came next, just weeks later, would confirm everyone's worst fears. Because when the palace finally spoke, truly spoke, it wasn't about illness. It was about truth. And that truth would shake the monarchy to its core. The next chapter would begin not with a statement, but with a single photograph, one that the world wasn't supposed to see. It's strange how silence can be louder than words, especially when it comes from the heart of Buckingham Palace. Days had turned into weeks, and yet, not a single official detail had emerged about Prince William's health. The world was left in limbo, guessing, worrying, speculating. But inside the walls of the royal residences, silence wasn't just policy. It was survival. The illness, whatever it was, had a name that terrified the doctors who discovered it. But that name was never written down in any report the public would see. It was only whispered, cautiously, among the inner circle. The palace medical staff referred to it as the shadow, a code word. Because what else do you call something that takes a man's strength slowly, quietly, invisibly? William's doctors had discovered it months earlier, long before that April morning when he faltered in public. It began with small things, dizzy spells, fatigue, a persistent ache he dismissed as stress. He was a father of 3, a husband, a working royal carrying the expectations of an entire country on his back. Stress seemed like the easiest explanation. But when the dizziness became disorientation, when he started forgetting names, missing briefings, even losing balance on stairs, Catherine insisted on tests. The results were devastating. The condition was rare, incurable, progressive. It attacked quietly, often undetected until it was too late. The doctors explained that even with treatment, it could only be managed, not cured. For a man whose entire existence revolved around endurance, stability, and leadership, those words were poison. He just sat there, one aide later confided. He didn't say anything. He looked out the window, and after a while, he whispered, "Don't tell anyone yet. Not even my father." He didn't want pity. He didn't want headlines. And most of all, he didn't want the world to see a weak heir. So the palace built a wall around him. His schedule was quietly modified. Engagements were postponed due to logistics. Public appearances shortened. Photos released strategically, always flattering angles, always with Catherine nearby, subtly supporting his posture. The illusion of control remained intact. But behind that illusion, reality was brutal. Some mornings, William couldn't get out of bed. His body refused to cooperate. His mind, sharp as ever, grew frustrated by the betrayal of his own limbs. Other days, he'd push himself too far, forcing smiles, shaking hands, giving speeches he could barely finish. And every time, Catherine would be there, watching, worrying, smiling through tears that no camera ever caught. She once told a close friend, "I don't think people understand how much he hides. They see strength. I see pain." Still, William refused to stop. He said he owed it to his country, to his family, to his mother's memory. But as his symptoms worsened, so did the palace's efforts to conceal them. They brought in specialists under aliases, flights booked under fake names, meetings held in remote estates to avoid press interference. Every report was shredded after review. Even the royal household staff were kept in the dark. Only a select few, Catherine, King Charles, 2 physicians, and William's private secretary, knew the full truth. But secrets have a way of leaking. In early May, a royal correspondent known for uncanny accuracy published a cryptic article titled, "The Heir's Invisible Battle." It spoke of a medical condition with lifelong implications, citing multiple royal insiders. Within hours, it was trending worldwide. The palace dismissed it as nonsense. But the article hit too close to home, too specific, too real. That night, William reportedly confronted his father. "We can't lie forever," he said. "Sooner or later, they'll know." King Charles, ever the strategist, replied, "The monarchy survives because it controls the story, not because it tells the truth." Those words broke something inside William. He'd spent his life preparing to lead a family bound by image. But now, he was the one forced to live behind the mask. At home, Catherine began noticing subtle changes. He would forget where he left his watch. He'd stop mid-sentence, lost in thought. Sometimes his hands would tremble when holding a cup of tea. But the most heartbreaking moments weren't physical. They were emotional. One night, Catherine found him sitting in the nursery, watching George and Charlotte sleep. He was silent for a long time. Then he whispered, "I'm not scared to die, Kate. I'm scared they'll grow up without remembering who I was." She didn't respond. She couldn't. Because how do you comfort a man who already knows his fate? From that moment on, her mission changed. She would preserve every memory, every moment, every smile. She started taking more home videos, organizing photos, journaling conversations. For the children, she said. But deep down, it was for her too. Meanwhile, the illness advanced. Slowly, quietly, mercilessly. Royal aides noticed William's handwriting changing. His once neat signature now slightly uneven. His speech patterns altered, occasional pauses, misplaced words. He masked it brilliantly, but not everyone was fooled. One aide recalled a particularly emotional moment during a meeting about a veterans' charity. William stumbled over a sentence, then laughed it off. "My brain's tired today," he said. But when the meeting ended, he sat motionless for a few minutes, staring at the table, his hand clenched into a fist. He was losing control, and he knew it. Behind the scenes, Catherine reached out to specialists abroad. There were rumors of experimental treatments in Switzerland, clinical trials in the United States. Nothing offered a cure, but some promised to slow progression. The palace authorized one such trial in secret. William flew privately to Geneva for 2 weeks under the guise of a climate summit. The media never suspected a thing. But the trip ended with heartbreaking news. The treatment wasn't effective for his type of condition. When he returned, his resolve hardened. "No more hiding," he told Catherine. "If this is what it is, I'll face it." But facing it didn't mean revealing it. He began doing something unexpected, speaking in riddles during speeches. Subtle references to fragility, time, and legacy. At a youth forum, he said, "We often think we have forever, but forever is shorter than we imagine." The crowd cheered, not realizing he was talking about himself. Catherine, sitting in the front row, held back tears. Every word he spoke carried double meaning. Every gesture, once routine, became symbolic. Hand on heart. Pauses between phrases. A lingering gaze. People called it maturity. Others called it depth. Only Catherine called it goodbye. The illness didn't just affect his body. It began haunting his dreams. He started waking in the middle of the night, disoriented, asking for his mother. Catherine described these moments as terrifyingly tender. He would look at me, she said, as though he wasn't sure if he was still here or already somewhere else. As weeks passed, his doctors delivered another blow. The disease was progressing faster than expected. One physician reportedly told Catherine, "We're looking at months, not years." She broke down in the hallway. "He's only 42, she whispered. 42. Imagine the cruelty of those numbers. The next morning, she told William the truth. He took her hand, smiled softly, and said, "Then let's make the months count." That was when everything changed again. William began taking control of his own narrative. He arranged meetings with charities he'd long supported, reached out to childhood friends, even wrote personal letters to royal staff thanking them for their loyalty. One letter, later leaked to the press, read, "We don't choose the time we're given, but we do choose how we use it." That line became iconic, shared by millions. To the public, it sounded like inspiration. To those who knew, it was farewell. Meanwhile, rumors of a mystery royal illness reached fever pitch. The tabloids speculated about everything from heart failure to autoimmune disease. Some even hinted at poisoning, each theory more outrageous than the last. But amid the noise, one journalist from the Times wrote something chillingly accurate. What the palace fears most isn't death, it's truth. Because truth meant vulnerability. And vulnerability was the one thing the monarchy couldn't afford. Yet, truth